Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, I got you, Jen.
And we're going to get started in just a moment here. Just letting everybody come in. Thank you for joining us this morning. Standard rules of engagement apply. If you're not speaking, please keep yourself on mute so that you don't distract everyone with your background noises. That's going to apply for me too. And yeah, I think that's it. And Steve, we've got about 60 people here.
Okay, I can see that in the participants pane. That's good.
And I think that's about it. So I think we can get started whenever we are ready.
I'm ready, and hopefully everybody else is having a good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the world at this point. Welcome to the RQAP Open Forum. We just wanted to give our RQAP registrants in the GLP and GCP disciplines an opportunity to hear some information about what we're doing and some of the numbers that we have associated with the GCP and GLP disciplines. Give us an opportunity to answer some questions that you have posed and give you the opportunity to ask some questions that may be on your mind about the RQAP credential and registration process. So we do have a short slide deck presentation that a few of us have put together. I'm going to attempt to navigate my way through it as best I can. Jane Aloisi, yes.
Sorry, do you want me to take over?
Well, no? Jane is here, so that's fantastic. Your chair of the RQAP, Jane Gavler-Fortune, is going to be the one who is directing most of the conversation. So I will step aside and let Jane talk
thanks,
about
Steve.
her
Sorry,
process.
My laptop computer said 10 o'clock right when I opened it up, but my cell phone says like 10:03, so not sure what's going on, but my apologies for being a couple minutes late. I forget how punctual this group is. Okay, Jen, do we have most of the folks online then? Lots of registrants?
Yes, we should go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. So I guess I wanted, so yes, welcome, thank you. I think Steve's probably given you a great welcome. I'll extend my own welcome. Thanks for tuning in, both existing RQAPs and people who are interested in becoming RQAPs. We hope this, so what we prepared has a little bit for everybody. But we don't want this just to be, a slide presentation. It really is intended to be an open forum where people can talk and ask questions freely and stuff like that. So, so I'll start in, but if people have questions, I don't know, do we want them to use the raise hand? And Jen, you can give me a heads up if people have raised their hands, or?
I can do that. I also think we've got 67 people on, including yourself and me. So I think that if you want to, we could also just like invite people to unmute themselves if they have a question. It probably is not going to be chaos.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So yeah, so if you have a question as we're going through some of these slides, we certainly don't have an hour's worth of slides, so just feel free to pipe up. Okay, Jen, I think you have control of the slides, Jen. Great. So we've done the welcome. Just wanted to provide a bit of an update so folks know what kind of company you're in or rather how many people have similar designations. So currently we have 239 registered quality assurance professionals in the GCPs, and 568 of our registered quality assurance professionals in the GLPs. The GLP designation has been around, I think, significantly longer.
And 10 years.
10 years longer.
Years
So
longer.
that tends to explain why the considerably different numbers. I apologize. Of course, my phone decides to ring. Let me just turn it off. Oh, my husband got it. Yay. Okay, and then the overachievers. There's some folks who hold both designations. So there's 19 of those. And then I just thought we could look at the average number of candidates we have each year. So about 46 on average in the GCPs and about 74 in the GLPs. And just around 3/4 of those carry on to become RQAPs. So gives you an idea, more or less, just over 30, I guess, new GCPs we would have a year. And sorry, my math, 3/4 of 75, whatever that is. We would have new GLPs, RQAP GLPs every year. So we do grow. So not every person who achieves the designation continues to re-register. So we do have some people dropping off on the other end, but I think overall the numbers are growing. Jen, tell me if I'm wrong.
Nope, no, you're correct.
Okay, any comments or questions about that? Okay, if not, then Jen, you can advance the slides, please. Thank you. So we wanted to talk a little bit about exam eligibility, and this obviously is primarily for people who have not written the exam yet. So per the candidate handbook and our SOPs, you need, if you have a bachelor's degree or higher, you need at least 2 years of full-time quality assurance experience in the GCPs or GLPs, depending on which exam you want to write. Or if you don't have a bachelor's degree, then at least 4 years of full-time quality assurance experience in one of those disciplines. I wanted to go over that. Well, let's go to the next slide because I talk a bit more about what that means. So full-time QA experience, it means your role is really focused on quality assurance activities. So if your role is only 50% quality assurance and maybe you hold another role that doesn't conflict with quality assurance, then you'd need twice as much time in that role than if you were 100% focused. So audits and inspections of processes required by those regulations. And I've indicated some, computer systems validation, looking at informed consent, in the GLPs, tester investigation of product accountability, adverse events, study reports, vendor activities. So those are the sorts of things if you're performing audits or inspections of those things. And obviously there's many other activities that are required by the regulations. Then that certainly is considered QA experience. Also SOP writing and overall management, and analyzing, evaluating, and advising in matters related to one of the two disciplines. That's a little bit about what we mean by full-time QA experience. And then the next slide, I wanted to include, so what doesn't count? And this is really important because there's been, I think, some confusion with some people over the past few months around this, and maybe it always crops up. But so having experience, even extensive experience in working with the GCPs or the GLPs is not the same as quality assurance experience in the GCPs or the GLPs. So we've had people who have been study directors, toxicologists, worked in GLP studies for 25 years. And, but they haven't worked in quality assurance. And I'm sure they know their regulations inside out and backwards. But this designation is more than about just knowing the regulations. It's also about knowing how to audit and what quality assurance is all about and how to be a quality assurance professional. So And then similarly in GCP, we've had people who have been CRAs for a long time, more senior folks heading up clinical departments, again, for decades. But if they don't have the quality assurance experience, they're not eligible to write the exam. And it's not just because we want to be elitists. The exam, as I say, is designed to not only test your knowledge in the regulations and in the guidances, but also to discuss and probe your understanding of QA principles and apply them to practical situations. So you need to know more than just the subject matter in the reference materials. And so studying the regulations without QA experience just won't be enough really to allow you to pass the exam. So that
And if I can step in real quick to piggyback on this.
Sure.
One thing we also want to mention as the council, that just having quality assurance management experience does not equate to quality assurance experience. What we're doing is we're trying to gauge your knowledge in auditing practices. Now you can go from, let's say you're lucky enough to go from the lab or a bench chemist directly into a management role in quality assurance. That is not auditing. That is just you managing the quality assurance professionals underneath you. Yeah, so if you only have management experience, we are going to push back on you and say you do not meet the requirements. You need to have quality assurance auditing experience. And if you can prove that you audit as well as manage, that's different. But if you only have management experience, we are going to be hard pressed to allow you to sit for the examination.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, we did discuss that, I think, last time, and that's an important distinction. and we've seen, more than one resume with exactly that. They have loads of great experience in the industry. They walk into a manager director role, and they're managing the group, and they have a group underneath them to do the actual auditing and inspecting. So they aren't doing it themselves. So thanks, Steve, for that. Okay, I think that's the last slide on exam eligibility. I think next we talk about re-registration. Is that right, Jen?
We do. There is a question in the chat.
Thank you. I was just going to ask. Okay, so what if you have, oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just going to recite what I just typed in there. Just you didn't see it, that's all. So if you have a quality background and you've done audits, you've had auditing experience in the past, but you have some like the MD-SAP and the MDR and the 13485 2016 auditing training, would that be sufficient enough to actually be qualified?
So you're saying you have experience working in the GCP or GLPs, but most of your quality assurance experience is in the medical device field?
I kind of got a little bit of both. I've got some pharmaceutics as well as medical device
quality assurance.
In quality assurance, yes. And then I also have the training, like I've done audits on the pharmaceutical side and for auditing, but not on the medical device side of training. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So because the GCPs and GLPs don't delve specifically into devices, then a lot of that is not going to help you much in terms of writing the exam.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, so what you need is really quality assurance experience like I say, in either a GCP field or a GLP field.
Right. And if I can piggyback on that as well, we're looking for directly relatable GCP or GLP experience. So GLP, obviously 21 CFR Part 58 or Part 11, and GCP, what is that?
Is that?
Yeah, a whole bunch of different ones. I'm not 50, GCP, 56, so I don't know. But GLP, it's easier because I don't have as many numbers to remember. But
and
it's-
EPA as well,
right.
Steve,
Yeah. So
because we have,
EPA,
yeah,
right. You're doing 40 CFR part 792 and part
Right.
160
and
for the
OECD
FIFRA
as well,
and
because the
TASCA
GLP.
and every, OECD regulation that there is out there. But that's what we're looking for. When we invite you to sit for the examination is 2 years of experience in GLP, in auditing GLP. So part 58, part 160, OECD, that sort of thing.
Oh,
And
okay.
then-
So, okay, it's more or less related with the GCP or GLP.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And then ISO or manufacturing, we don't have a GMP designation. We've talked about it. It just doesn't fit in yet.
Okay.
However many years from now, maybe that's a different story. But right now, it's only GCP or GLP. Now that doesn't mean you can't go elsewhere and get your credentials
Like
or
your
registration at ASQ
yeah.
or something along those lines. Obviously, we want you to come, hang out with us. But it's for the SQA, the RQAP registration. It's again, to reiterate, it's only GCP or GLP.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm glad that we talked about this because I wasn't aware of that. But so thank you. That information is very helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
we
that kind of piggybacks onto, I'm using that term a lot. I'll have to think of something else to say. But James Kittredge had a question, and it kind of is along the same lines, James, where it looks like your listings are a lot of more on the manufacturing side. So if you do want to sit for the examination, either in GLP or GCP, you have to be able to prove that you have the 2 years or 4 years of experience in either one of those disciplines.
Yeah, so it says, supplier qualification, monitoring and auditing. So there's some other sort of certifications which don't count specifically towards the experience. And then it says, including labs and clinics, does that work? So
I did unmute. So
Thanks.
as clarification, in my role, I have had to monitor and qualify CRO labs, GCP labs, and clinical sites that are operating in our clinical trials. So it's not 52 weeks of reviewing records in a clinic or a laboratory, but virtually everywhere I go, I'm looking at laboratory records for our testing facilities.
okay, so your experience is pretty much exclusively for qualifying labs or clinical sites, is that right?
But also manufacturing facilities too, drug manufacturings, biologic manufacturings, CMOs, CROs, clinical research sites, along with laboratories doing testing of patient samples for us.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like you have that is auditing experience.
Oh yeah, but auditing, yes. I'm not sure how the Venn diagram works for this certification.
Yeah, so this was a while ago, but what I remember is a lot of the situational questions are around investigator site audits and handling yourself in and around those. So I don't know whether you're qualifying ever individual sites or whether it's usually, CROs and things like that.
Okay. Okay.
How many years of experience do you have doing what you're doing?
About 40.
40.
So that's a 4 followed by a 0 and no decimal point in between.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been working in quality and/or regulatory affairs for about 40 years now.
So James,
I'm only 23.
Yeah. Absolutely. That new Chicago math, it gets me every time too. So what we would do, James, in that instance is we would take a look at your CV and we would probably enter into some sort of back and forth or discussion with you, because what you have to do is just prove that you have a minimum of 2 years of experience or 4 years of experience without a degree. in the discipline. So if that's spaced out over 40 years and you could say, well, you know, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, chances are very good that we would allow you to sit for the examination. Now, I can't give you a definite answer one way or the other without seeing the breadth of your experience. But for those of you on the call that are wondering, well, I have 25 years of experience and I don't audit all of the time, but I do perform audits. This is what we need to work on with the construction of your CV, is proving the minimum. It does not have to be consecutive. It does not have to be your most recent experience. It just has to be 2 years of experience, or 4 years if you do not have a baccalaureate degree or above. So that kind of goes into the next question that we have from Lauren. Opportunity to provide CV eligibility information, receive feedback. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone can apply for the examination.
Or send their CV before their application.
Exactly.
Yeah,
or send their CV.
Yeah, I think what they were asking is because it costs, there's a price obviously to apply and a certain amount of that's non-refundable. So
yeah, but we'll take a look at all of that and we will provide you feedback to say you meet the minimum requirements. We need more in these areas. You're not showing these particular areas. We will work with you. It's not just a one and done sort of thing, unless it's clear that you do not meet the minimum requirements. If there's any question, there will be a back and forth, and you will have an opportunity to expand on some of your experience. We, as Jane mentioned earlier, we're not elitist. We want people to come in and we want people to join our ranks and sit for the examination. We want you to pass the examination too. So we are going to work with you as much as we possibly can to make sure that we exhaust all options in allowing you to sit for the examination.
Right. So I mean, so in terms of will we review it outside of an application? I mean, I think we have done. We certainly don't want it to be the norm where everyone sends their CV to us for review outside of the application process. Because then we're just, you know, reviewing everything twice. So if and I'm sure lots of people wouldn't feel the need, I guess, because they know that they're going to qualify. But I don't know, Jen, do we want to say yes, we will, you know, if you really feel that you are unsure, or do we want to say?
I mean, we say that on the website, and we say that in the candidate handbook, that if you are not sure if you meet eligibility because it's not, you haven't had a straightforward QA role for the required amount of time, then certainly you can send your CV to RQAP at SQA.org, and we'll have someone on the council in that discipline look at the CV, and if it's at all questionable, we have more than one person look at it, so that there's some sort of consensus. And sometimes there is, as Steve mentioned and as Jane mentioned, feedback on, you know, could you give us more information on this role, or your CV doesn't have a lot of information on it, can you like expand on what your duties were, that kind of thing. So I did want to also suggest, we've got a couple of other questions still. Rather than spending time on every individual's questions about whether or not they qualify, we may need to move on a little bit at this point. But we can quickly address Sarah's question, which is about recommended training courses that could be taken to help with preparation.
Right. So we do have practice exams for purchase, correct, Jen? So they would be available through the RQAP, or sorry, the SQA store. And I think that's generally what we recommend is purchase and going through some of those exams.
And SQA has training courses, but they are not designed specifically as preparation for the exam. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't be helpful to you. They might be very helpful to you in studying, but that's not the purpose of those training courses.
Right. Whereas obviously the practice exams, that is the purpose. So hopefully that answers your question, Sarah.
Another thing that you can do, Sarah, and everyone else who's curious about this particular topic, What I would tell people when they were about to sit for the examination, asking me questions on, well, what do I need to look at? What do I need to study? Well, it's there in, GCP. Look at the GCP regulations. Look at the GLP regulations, Part 58, Part 11, 160, 792, OECD stuff. Familiarize yourself with the regulations themselves. And then when you're sitting for the examination, think about it from the standpoint of what do the regulations say? How are the regulations written? Not what is my company's interpretation of the regulation, because sometimes those are two different things. Where the regulation reads something specific or something general in most cases, and your company interprets it differently. So your SOP may be written as such where what you're looking at as far as the question and the possible responses don't necessarily jive with what your company does. So that at that point, you need to think, what does the regulation say? How does it read? And how can I interpret based on these particular answers? You got to remember that the questions have been written by professionals, quality assurance professionals, either RQAP, GLP, or GCP professionals.
Yeah, and
So,
Jen, am I imagining it, or in the handbook itself, is there like just a smattering of example questions right in the handbook?
There are two or three. It's not very detailed.
Yeah, exactly. But just so that people can see the style, because I did another presentation about this certification or this designation, but there are kind of three classes of questions. So there's the ones that are, I can't remember exactly what the words we use are, but one is, being able to regurgitate the regulations. There's not a lot of interpretation. Then there's, one level higher, which is being able to analyze and make judgments. And then there's sort of an application level where you have to, again, take your knowledge and the analysis and apply it. So being able to see some of those questions, I think will help you sort of get your head around how we're going to ask you to think during the exam. So some of the other questions are more about the specifics of, do you think I would qualify? So if people who have those questions about their own experience can perhaps either send in their CVs or send that question in separately, that would be great. Sean, thanks. Great comment. Yes, if you take advantage of the mentoring program and specifically ask to be mentored with another RQAP, you can have access to all sorts of great information that way.
And not only that, if you participate in the SQA mentoring program as a mentor, that will earn RQAP Re-Registration units.
Okay, somebody had asked about open-ended questions. So no, they're multiple choice. Having said that, some of the answers are a paragraph and a half long, right? Some of your multiple choice answers, again, because these are now you're being asked to sort of apply your experience. So is it always more than one answer? I'm not sure I really understand that question, but
it's never more than one answer. No. There is one best answer.
Right, but sometimes it will be both A and C, right?
Correct, so but that's the multiple choice.
Yes, selection. Exactly. So if the best answer is A and C, then that's the correct answer. I hope that makes sense and addresses that question.
So we're getting into sort of the weeds about how the exam is constructed,
yes.
which actually leads into our next slide.
Yes.
And Melissa Meyer-Eli, who is the chair of the GCP exam committee, is here and she Excellent. Is ready to talk about this. So I'm going to move along on that.
Good morning. Yes. So Jane answered some of those questions which are related to that. So yes, I am the committee exam chair for the GCP. And what do we do? So we have a job task analysis. So when I think about when I took the inaugural SQA RQAP exam just a couple of years ago, what we did back then, honestly, is really a lot different than what we do now. So we do every so often do a job task analysis. So we look at and we survey the SQA members and say, what do you do? And then we take that information based on those results and we modify the content outline. So we will remove things. And I can't come off the top of my head think of some of the things that we've removed, but let's look at it this way. Some of the things that we've added is risk-based monitoring and how we audit those types of things. So we are keeping the exam content current based on what people are doing in their real jobs today. So we talked about the exam items. So yes, our RQAPs do write these exam items, and we have this content outline. And if you go to the website, you will see what is the information that you'll find in this exam. And we actually have a certain percentage of our test items need to reflect those particular content. So we look at that. We look at those exam items. We just don't simply say, oh, we have a new exam item and put it into the exam. The committee actually reviews those exam items. So we're looking at a few things. We're looking at, are the answers correct? Again, Steve mentioned there's what we do in our jobs and how our company interprets and how our company has this in SOPs, and frequently what we see in the exam items is really a company's perspective of that activity. So we really look at those exam items and make sure that they fit that content, and then we put them into for testing. Passing score study, we do look at what is our statistics on that? Do we need to move the pass-fail? For the exams, when we've already looked at the draft newly written items for that, but we also look at after the exams have been administered and we have the results from those exams, we take a look at the items and are we sure when we look at how the participants scored or answered a particular one, is the answer, could it be misleading? Is there possibly something that we missed that it's not very clear? So I mentioned that, we have these exam items that are written. We just don't automatically put them into the exam. So for actual use, they go into the exam, they are pilot tested. So when we talk about pilot testing, what we are seeing is, or what we're looking for is, how are these? Are these too easy? Because remember, we are testing and validating and certifying our knowledge and experience. So if we have something too easy, that's not really giving us the recognition we deserve by earning this particular certification. But is it also too hard? So we're not saying we want something too easy, but we don't want something that's too hard that really doesn't quite reflect everyone's particular knowledge. So we're looking for that Goldilocks and the three bears where it's just right. We're looking for those particular right answers. We're also looking at things that need to be removed because we just aren't getting the right statistics. And so we'll move those old findings or those old responses out and put in something from the same particular content. So after you have earned your RQAP certification, and congratulations once you do, we need to have these exam items. Like I mentioned, we recycle some. Sometimes they're just too old. Sometimes we've looked at our job task analysis and that question is no longer relevant. So we need to pull those particular items out, and we need to have exam items. So good news is, once you do have your RQAP certification, you can write some exam items, and you can also be a part of the committee, and you can also do both, and you do earn or you do earn all of a sudden I've lost my words, re-registration credits for both of those. So by all means, welcome to the club if you want to join.
Thanks so much,
Any
Lisa.
questions?
That was excellent.
So that was from the GCP perspective. GLP exam committee is run pretty much the same way. We still look at the items. We still determine whether or not they are written properly, or if they're poorly performing, or if they're relevant to today's regulations, which, as we all know, they haven't changed in almost 30 years. But when they do, we'll have extra material to build from. And I urge, I haven't written any questions, but I urge you, if you have an interest in writing questions for the GCP or the GLP examinations, please do so. Please contact the CPR. Please contact the exam committee members if you know someone. If you've taken the examination and you've complained about some of the content, well, take the next step and join the group to make improvements to the examination. I mean, we're only as good, the registration, the credentialing, whatever you want to call it, is only as good as the content of the examination. So if you feel strongly enough that you don't want people to go through what you had to go through however many years ago when sitting through the examination, step up and offer to write questions. And it will give you a greater appreciation of just how much work the GCP and GLP examination committees do. We're very lucky that we've had continuity with a lot of those groups. But I urge you to help out as best you can in any way that you can.
Yeah, no, and I have written questions before, and it's tough. It's tough to come up with questions that aren't no-brainers and that aren't a matter of opinion, but that especially, you know, those analysis and application questions, they're very challenging to write. But we still have people go through a training session, correct, Jen, before they're asked to write any questions?
We do. There's actually, we usually call once or twice a year, we call for volunteers for a variety of exam development volunteers. It kind of depends on what year it is and what the needs of the specific exam are. But we actually, I believe this evening is the kickoff meeting of the next GCP exam item writers, the volunteers who volunteered to do it this time. And then we also, earlier this week, did the initial meeting to conduct the GLP job task analysis, which is something that's done every 5 years for each exam. And usually that kicks off with a meeting where people talk about sort of what does a GLP or a GCP QA job look like right now? What tasks are performed? And then we do a really big survey of lots of GLP QA or GCP QA folks to kind of confirm those tasks and how much time they spend on them. And that's how the content outline is developed. So when those opportunities come up to write exam questions, to participate on the job task analysis task force, to participate in a passing score study, sign up and do it. And you get RQAP Re-Registration points for doing it too. So
yes,
kind of can't wait.
Segue, Jen. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about re-registration on the next slide. So just for people who have been RQAPs for a little while, you will be aware that the way we assign units has changed. We're getting a lot of feedback over the years, I think, that having a quarter unit per hour was too confusing. So we just basically multiplied everything by 4. So now a 1 hour webinar is worth 1 unit, but now instead of needing to get 12 units in a 3-year period, you need to get 48. And of those, half or 24 need to be discipline specific. So what that means is half of your re-registration units, if you're an RQAP GLP, need to be applicable specifically to the GLPs. So when certainly if you're taking an SQA webinar or course or training, you'll be able to see what type of units we're assigning it, whether it's applicable to both GCP and GLP, whether it's we have something called non-GLP, non-GCP, or any combination of those. So you just have to make sure that half of your units are specific to the discipline that you have your registration in. We also have an online learning management system, so really everything can be submitted through that. So there's certain activities where it will be entered automatically. I believe still the webinars that you sign up for and attend, they automatically go into the LMS. But for instance, if you attended the annual meeting, because how people engaged with that was different, you need to actually go into the learning management system and enter in all the sessions that you attended. And then we have a re-registration committee that will review all those and either ask for additional clarification or approve it. So
just to clarify, the re-registration committee doesn't have to approve the annual meeting credits. You just have to claim them to tell us what you attended, because with the virtual
yes, of course.
meeting, we don't necessarily know that up front. When it's an in-person annual meeting, it's a lot easier because we can just say you picked up your badge, therefore you were there, and we're giving you credit. But with a virtual meeting, you could go to like 2 sessions live and then watch 5 sessions on demand, and the systems don't talk to each other. It's just too complicated, so that we had to have you claim them. But if you attended, for example, the ACRP annual meeting or the DIA meeting, we don't know that. There's no way for us to know that. So those are the things you absolutely have to submit through the self-reported learning module if you want to get credit for them anyway.
Can I interject something here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing I also see people forgetting is your SQA membership and like your regional memberships don't get uploaded automatically. So just make sure you're remembering, you know, if you're a member of those organizations or either SQA or the regional chapter stuff, just make sure that you're uploading that and just like upload your receipt of payment to self-reported learning. A lot of people forget that. And then they're like 2 units short. Yeah, and they're 2 units short. And I'm like, hey, you didn't upload this for any of the 3 years that you've been, you know, a member this whole time. So yeah, just make sure you're uploading that for in self.
Courtney, great reminder.
Yeah, we've been trying to automate that, but for some reason, the way the systems talk to each other, the membership is treated differently than purchasing a product or attending an event. So it doesn't go into the learning management system automatically, and we're still looking for a workaround, but I haven't found it yet.
Yeah. And we just, the last bullet, we just want to assure people that, you know, we know that not all companies are able to provide the monetary support to send people to conferences or training, whether it's virtual or not. There is quite a lot of free stuff available through the SQA store, things that come up even outside of SQA. There's a lot of free webinars that different organizations have. You do have to look for them, and it might be a bit harder, and there's, you know, not likely to be big chunks like the annual meeting that are going to be free. But you know, if you don't have that sort of financial support from the organization you work for, as long as you don't leave it all, you know, to the last 6 months before your re-registration is due, if you start at it right away at the beginning of your new 3-year cycle, then, you know, you should be able to do it. So
another thing that, and the website talks about this, we have your own internal company trainings that you can use. Obviously, you just have to submit proof that you've attended this particular training. And if you're submitting a certain number of re-registration units or hours, you need to be able to prove that as well. If you think about it, if you break down the math, it's 3 years to get your 48 units. Every few weeks, do an hour-long training session if you have that capability. It doesn't necessarily have to be a chunk conference or an SQA affiliated course. There's various other ways. Be a mentor, serve on committees, you know,
Yeah, I was just gonna
any
say,
number of
Steve.
things.
Yeah, and
for that.
let's not forget that it's not just about training, right? It's being involved. So if you
Right.
on committees, put yourself up for election, write questions. There's all sorts of, do a poster, do a presentation. There's all sorts of other ways. Even membership. I know Courtney brought up your membership in SQA, but if you're also a member of, you know, ACRP or ASQ or some of these other organizations, they also count towards re-registration. So it's all in our SOPs, and I think in the maybe not in the handbook, but in our SOPs, the re-registration.
And the FAQs.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Thank you, and
there's a
FAQs.
whole item on the RQAP FAQ page that addresses like free or low cost ways to re-register. And that's at sqa.org/RQAP-FAQ.
Thank you, Jen.
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, if we can jump to the next slide. So I know that an earlier question did ask about, you know, is there an advantage to having this registration? So we thought, we obviously asked ourselves the same questions. And so, you know, does anyone care if people that work for them have an RQAP? And so we asked. So we did an initial survey more of the RQAPs, but then we felt it was important to, again, find out what management's perspective was. So we sent out I think we asked the RQAPs for contact information of their management level. And then we sent survey out and got 210 respondents, most at the director level, some at other levels, as you can see, manager, supervisor, other VP. So that's who responded to our survey. And on the next slide.
Sorry, I'm also typing answers to the chat.
Yes,
question.
thanks, Jen. This is what they said. So this is some of what the top benefits that those management folks felt there was to having QA employees with RQAPs. So it confirmed that their employees have a good knowledge of the necessary regulations and tasks to do their job. They felt it was a good goal for QA employees, not only to get the registration, but in particular to continue their professional growth and knowledge. And that's something I've been trying to really change my thinking on a little bit, that the continuing education, I think people should think of it not just as a means to an end to get their re-registration, but to understand the reason that we want continuing education is so that people are, stepping outside their own world of work, keeping current with new regulations and guidances and industry practices. So even if it wasn't for the need for re-registration units, continuing education is so valuable. And I can't stress enough that you and your organization will be much better for participating in continuing education. So they felt that it contributed to a strong QA function within their organization. It increased the confidence that clients had in the work the organization did, and for some people who have to provide justification for training budgets, having the need for re-registration units and therefore some training was a way to get justification to keep those folks trained. And again, it benefits an organization to have their QA professionals up to date with current industry thinking, current regulatory thinking. It helps everybody. And so our organization helps to provide managers with the justification they need to spend those training dollars. And
if that weren't enough, you also get this really cool, very, very high quality cardstock certificate with your name and signatures indicating that you have passed the RQAP, GCP, or GLP examination. And if you re-register enough, you get this high quality sticker that you can place on your certificate. I mean, if that's not motivation, I don't know what is.
I'll also say if you re-register enough, you get specifically the certificate that Steve has with
That's
the
right.
stripe, the fancy stripe down the side, because that means that he's been an RQAP for more than 15 years.
Right. It doesn't mean that I'm old. It just means that
No.
I have the 15 plus years of
Started when you were 5.
registrant experience.
Yes, great.
All kidding aside, it's one of those tangible things. Every time I have my other placard hanging up in my office at work, and every now and again I just take a glance at it and say, "What? You know what? I did that. I have this accomplishment." And it's got all sorts of stickers on the bottom, and it gives me a sense of pride that I am part of something. I am part of a professional society that not a whole bunch of people are a part of. And it just is a testament to the amount of work that I've put in as a QA professional over close to 20 years in this particular industry. And some of you are probably saying, well, it's a piece of paper, Steve. Well, you know what? Yes, it's a piece of paper, but so is your diploma. So is your bachelor's degree certificate. So is your master's or your doctorate degree. It means something. To me, this is more than a piece of paper. This is representative of the time that I've put in and the knowledge that I've gained as a quality assurance professional.
Yeah, well put, Steve. Thanks. Jen, I can't remember. Is that the last slide or did we have another one? Because there are a few questions.
So we have the questions, the slides that have the questions on them.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, let's quickly flip to that, but then there's a couple questions in the chat that I would like to address as well. Oh, this is a new one. Okay.
This is not a new one from, well, we got it overnight. So there's been
yes,
some
I did see the
emails.
flurry of emails. Yes.
Right.
New for
So-
me.
Steve had a pat answer prepared, so maybe Steve would like to answer this.
Sure. Go ahead, Steve.
So okay, I'm put on the spot now. All right. So basically, we appreciate this particular question, and for those of you who aren't as quick readers as some others, the basic gist of the question is we've all been suffering through the coronavirus pandemic, and it is greatly hindering the potential and possibility for many people of attending conferences or meetings or external trainings. So the question is essentially asking, can we do something to potentially waive the requirements, reduce the mandatory number of units, so on and so forth? If you look at our website, we actually have addressed this question in the past about the fact that we will work with people who have been affected by the pandemic. I can't give you a definitive answer that absolutely we're going to waive it or we're going to reduce it. It requires more discussion. Not only with the council, the CPR, but with the SQA board of directors. So we're going to have to take the question back and have that discussion between the groups. But know that if you are experiencing some hardship, reach out to us. Reach out to the CPR, and we will work with you as much as we possibly can to figure something out. It may work. It may not. But we aren't just going to dismiss it out of turn. We are going to look into it. But to give you a definitive response, it's going to take a little bit more time to actually sit down and analyze the question and figure out all possible responses. Jen, is that good enough? Did I capture it?
I think so. I think the other thing that I would say is we talk about it. The question talks about events being held virtually. If you attended virtual events, please submit them. Virtual events are absolutely count toward your re-registration. So, and all of SQA's virtual events have had RQAP units attached to them. So I don't want to discount the fact that an event moved to virtual. That doesn't mean that it's not still educational and worthwhile.
Right. And for sure, people who are expected to re-register this fall, I mean, they've had the full pandemic impacting it. What we have done in the past, and you know, last year during re-registration time, some people asked for an extension. So we've provided that in specific situations. Now we do, again, we're not gonna, I don't think, offer a widespread sweeping extension. But if you have encountered situations that meant that you could not, over that 3 years with the pandemic, get your units, then we will consider granting an extension so that you can go beyond the end of September to get your credits. Just keep in mind that, you know, if we give you an extra month or two, then that's a month or two that gets taken off of your next re-registration period. So just to keep that in mind. But anyways, we're reasonable folks, and we'll do our best to help people out. And I think Jen, there was a bunch of questions, but Jen has been doing an amazing job at answering some of the specific questions. So if people have been keeping an eye on their chat, then hopefully if you had the same question, you can also, you can see the answers there. So Jen's been answering pretty much all of them, I think.
Yes, I have been trying. There's a couple most recent ones that I haven't gotten to yet, but I will, and I'll also send out a transcript of the chat.
Oh, great.
For everyone. We'll send out the slides because I've gotten requests for that, and a transcript of the chat. I've also gotten some requests for the list of benefits of holding the RQAP according to RQAPs, which I have from a separate survey that we did of RQAPs. So I'll send that list out as well.
Great,
and this slide is some of our other questions that we received in advance.
Right. So so somebody had asked about whether or not there's any way to break the test down, because it's hard to sit there and just write for 3 hours. So it's because of how the exam is overseen and how tightly we need to control access to the questions. It's not all that easy to just say, okay, well, you can write it in 2 or 3 chunks. Having said that, there is a form that you can fill out for accommodation. And if you feel you need an extra hour to write the test, and maybe that hour goes towards giving yourself an hour break in the middle, then you can apply for that accommodation. So please reach out, and or if you have an accommodation that we haven't listed on the form, reach out and work with you in whatever way we can to make it so that you can write the exam. It would be nice to have an overview of how SQA achieves accreditation for their tests. So the short answer is, as we said in our meeting, we don't actually have an accreditation for the tests, but I think Melissa did a great job outlining how the exams are created. And we do work with an organization, PTI, right? And they do these sorts of tests for all sorts of organizations, probably all around the world. And so again, they conduct the training. They provide, I think, input on how we deploy the exams, and they do they oversee the exams for us. So it is managed by an external organization who does this. That is their business. And we, again, Melissa explained, you don't just, it's not just somebody slapping together a bunch of questions and putting it on a page. It's a very thorough, involved process, very rigorous.
Well, and as far as there is accreditation available, like you can get accreditation for, it's basically like a certification for your certification program is the bottom line. But there are 2 organizations that do accreditation of credential programs. SQA has talked about that in the past. It's a very expensive prospect. And we have actually surveyed RQAPs to find out if it's something that's important to them or not, that the exams be credentialed, and the answers we got back were sort of not really. So it hasn't seemed to be worth the cost that we would have to invest. But it is something that comes up every couple of years, and we revisit, because being QA professionals, generally, you guys like to have proof. You like to have documentation that the credential means something, that it has actually been developed according to a standard for credentials. So it's something we would love to do someday, but it's so expensive. It just hasn't been a high priority.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, so we don't have much time left, if at all. Oh no, we're past time, I think, but I'm hoping that people's questions otherwise have been answered in the chat. Is there anyone who didn't have their question answered in the chat and would really like to raise it now? I'm hearing silence, so. I'm taking that either people have had their questions answered or feel that they can reach out separately. So yeah, I hope that folks found this to be valuable, helpful, gave them some answers to questions that they had. Hopefully you got a chance to put faces to names that you might see in relation to the Council on Professional Registration. So thank you very much for attending. Really appreciate that. We very much look forward to next year when we will all be live again and doing this more at an RQAP breakfast at the annual meeting rather than virtually.
With your ribbons that say
With your ribbons,
you're an
that's right.
RQAP.
Yay.
Yet another tangible benefit of
Right, that's
obtaining
right.
the RQAP registration.
Yeah. So and if anyone thinks of a question, oh, I wish I'd asked that, please just email the RQAP email address and we will get a response to you. So thank you so much. I don't think there's much else to say, but have a great day. And yeah, we look forward to being able to be live again someday soon.
Thanks, Jane. Well done.
Thanks, Steve, for pitching in before I got in. And
No problem.
Appreciate it.
No problem. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone for taking time out to hang out with us.
Great job,
today.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Catherine. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.